Hello, welcome to the G.I. Joe New News Review. I am David Allen. The following content was originally intended for the G.I. Joe fan club, but due to unforeseen circumstances, this content will no longer be used in that venue. And so I wanted to share them with you here. I hope you enjoy. Hello, welcome to season 2 of the G.I. Joe Fan Club Live. This is episode 1 of season 2. We are joined by my new co-host, Roger Taft, one of the co-authors of, I can't really see, After Action Report, the guide series, and very big G.I. Joe fan, very big proponent of the G.I. Joe community. And we are also blessed to have with us today on episode 1 of season 2, Brian Sauer, who is one of the proponents of several different G.I. Joe events through the year, Assembly Required, and Armor. And he also does a lot of graphic design work, and he's helping out pretty much everybody in the community. I don't know how he does it. Welcome, Roger, and welcome, Brian.
Hello.
So the way that the G.I. Joe Fan Club Live works is it covers the entirety of the G.I. Joe history from its inception to the present. It covers the original figures, it covers packaging, it covers comics, it covers animation, it covers all different type of the gambit of what G.I. Joe is in its history. We are in the 60th anniversary of G.I. Joe, and I thought, why not have the first episode be about G.I. Joe events? G.I. Joe events have been going on since, I would say, the mid-90s. There was an event on the USS Intrepid in California, and there was a couple other events with DeSimone in the 90s as well. And then in the 2000s, the G.I. Joe Fan Club, the third G.I. Joe Fan Club, if I'm not correct, maybe the fourth, I can't remember which one it is, started JoeCon, and that went for about 16 years. And then that went away. But in the interim of that, we also had Assembly Required that was going on at the same time. We have SoCal Joe Show. There are meetups around the United States and in Europe, because there's a European G.I. Joe show that's every year, and I'm blanking on the name of it. Rollout Roll Call. That's it. Rollout Roll Call. And then JoeCon ended, and then Joe Fest kind of took the baton and ran, and they're still going. So, but besides that, all of us have been to many events outside of Joe events. We've been to comic conventions, we've been to Transformers conventions, we've been to sci-fi conventions. So the whole idea of events surrounding a particular subject matter, whether it be a Star Trek convention, a Star Wars celebration, or even a comic book convention, or even a soap event, or for the matter of fact, there are book conventions. My partner goes every year to a related book event that involves Nancy Drew. So I'm going to ask you two guys, because I think both of you would have different kind of approaches to what you feel is a good event. I'm going to go with Brian, since you are running 2 events concurrently for the last few years. What do you think adds up to a good event, regardless of what that subject matter is?
Yeah, I would say activities, things to do. There's so much focus all the time on sales floor, which is great. But when you get into a multi-day kind of conference and stuff, a convention, you want other things to do, other things to occupy your time. And I think those that keep those activities going, that provide that kind of ability to meet and mingle with other people is fantastic. Are those things that you look for? I mean, so much of what we talk about anymore as far as like the larger group is, we're interested in what happens around the convention as much as we're interested in at what happens at the convention, that time we get to spend together with each other.
I've really come to believe that that's accurate with, especially AR. The last few years I've attended, it is a community event. I don't look at it as a convention. I've told you this numerous times over the years. It doesn't feel like a convention to me. And both me and Roger have been to hundreds of conventions, if not thousands, myself. And assembly required, it does. It feels like the community comes together and they do a bunch of stuff together. Then there's a convention at the middle of it. We eat, we have breakfast, we watch cartoons and stuff like that, and we just talk to one another. It's kind of like the Shriners or the Masons or something, but it's our Shriners, our Masons.
We don't have the hats.
We
need to get the hats.
You're right.
We need helmets.
Roger,
helmets.
What's your take on it?
I'm sorry,
Roger, what's your take?
I think it depends on what community you're in as far as what makes a good convention. G.I. Joe is very community oriented. So the Joe Cons and Joe Fest, that is a weekend long party when it gets down to it. But other shows, comic conventions, toy shows, definitely the sales floor is the key there. And then a good mix of guests if it's a larger show, and like Brian said, other activities to continue through the weekend. So it just depends on what you're there for. If you're there for friends and family, then AR is a good example of that. Even though this will be my first one, I haven't experienced it yet, but I've heard good things.
Don't believe them. They're not all true. No.
Yeah, so I'm assuming they're not.
Yeah.
But if it's just a regular run-of-the-mill toy show or comic show, then yeah, the sales floor is really the key to it as far as I'm concerned. So
the thing about conventions from my perspective, and like I said, I can't probably count every one of these conventions I've been. I've done all these different subject matters: Star Wars Celebration, Star Trek Vault Cons, comic conventions for decades, 20, 30 years. Dragon Con, Heroes Con, Mega Con. I've been to G.I. Joe events. I've been to Transformer events. And they all have different unique styles, and it depends on the showrunner, I've noticed. Like when I would go to Joe Con, I felt that it was a little bit, and I have to be careful about this community, but it felt a little bit more militaristic, like it was really run very, very rigidly. And I from my last few years of going to Assembly Required and even Joe Fest, it does feel warmer. It feels more down to earth. Feels like, yeah, we might make a mistake, but we're doing our best. We're trying to get the people there the best experience they can. Am I wrong in that?
no, I don't think so. Joe Con was very organized and very regimented, and this is what we're doing now. This is what we're doing then. Okay, now you have free time. But yeah, it was, here's the show exclusives. You get in line for those. Here's what we're doing for the weekend. Here's the dinner. Other shows are a little more free. So,
yeah, I feel like Joe Con had an interesting vibe, especially with the what do I want to say? The exclusives made it an interesting animal as far as like people's attitudes and kind of just some of the I don't even know what to call it really, but it just seemed like there was some I don't know, like there was something there that people were very much like, don't get in my way of me getting my stuff.
At least not on night one, anyway.
Right. It wasn't a all the time, every time type thing, but it definitely had that sense of,
Urgency.
yes.
Yeah.
So you don't think the camaraderie was there in the sense that it is for the more modern family events like Assembly Required, Joe Fest, which they gear it towards the family and the children and try to include as many people as possible in those events?
I
I
think
think
there
it was there. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. I think it was there. It just wasn't like the total vibe of the show, right? Like it wasn't the whole overarching feel or sense of community you got out of it. But no, it was definitely there, because if without Joe Fest and Joe Con and those kinds of things, I don't think there would be an AR would still be going, because it was those people who I've met in those situations in that community that have helped, build and continue this stuff. I've, made a lot of good friends at both those shows that, have translated to hanging out in Iowa.
Absolutely. And I don't think there was a lack of family atmosphere at JoeCon. I think it was more the difference between like Joe Fest is like going to the state fair and just going and doing whatever you want and hanging out with friends. Whereas Joe Con was like going on a cruise with a cruise director, and you know when you're going to have dinner, and you know when you're going to check in, and you know where you're going to stay, and you know when the party is, that kind of thing. So.
Did either of you attend any of the DeSimone or the USS Intrepid events back in the 90s?
No,
I missed Intrepid by a year. It was the same outfit, but I did Chicago in '95, and I did one DeSimone, mostly because he was always on the wrong side of the country for wherever I was at the time. But I happened to be in New York one weekend, or 1 week actually, and he happened to be having a show that weekend, so I was able to get to that one.
How was
that? It was lackluster because it was near the end of his run. It was almost exclusively 12-inch, and it was strange because he wasn't even really in attendance at his own show. I was kind of wanting to meet him just because I'd read his books and had his guides and stuff and knew about him for a long time. But I saw him pop in once, and he was like, "Hey, how's the show going? Okay, good. I'm back off to lunch," or whatever. That was it.
That must be nice to do that, huh, Brian?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That would be. I don't know. It would be nice. What would be nice would be to sit back and like actually take it all in and enjoy it all. Not have to worry about, what's going on over here. Make sure the person's on time and this and that. But yeah, we're working on that. Working on it.
I don't think either of us those type of people where we can just let things like go like that. I think myself, I'm like, maybe I need to let things go a little bit more, but it's I don't know. It's a personality thing, I guess. So,
excuse me for 1 second. I've got a dog that wants in.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's okay.
Dog that wants out.
So, Roger, the beginning of Joe Con, that was like what, in 2004, I think, right?
I think the first one for 3 3/4 inch was 2002.
Oh.
But it started in, I want to say 97.
97?
Yeah, I think it was 97 or 98.
Wow, I didn't know it was that long. I only thought it was like 16 years or so. Or were there?
Well, it was very focused on 12-inch the first few years,
okay.
And then when they did the Crimson Strike team, they kind of did it to test the waters, and they got a much bigger response than they expected.
So that audience stepped up then.
Yeah.
Now,
and over the next 5 years, it transitioned almost completely to 3 3/4 inch, and the 12-inch guys almost left.
Well, but there's still events. We have Toylanta, and we have
Joe Lanta,
Joe Lanta,
which is now both again.
It's two. They were two, then they put it into one, then they broke it. I don't know. I can't keep track of that. I don't even know which one I should be going to. Joe Lanta is the one I'm trying to go to next year if I can, but I've missed it the last 2 years. But yeah, the 12-inch guys, that is that audience. See, that's the thing. I've got to be careful. It's because I don't want to get that audience upset at me. There's a particular.
You don't want pitchforks coming at you.
Well, there's a particular type of situation where we're not all going to stay where we're at. We're not in the same position we were last year or the year before or the year before. We're going to keep moving forward, whether that be in age or in hobbies or likes or dislikes. We're going to move forward. So that audience is a diminished return if you aren't careful. You have to kind of encourage your audience, encourage that particular crowd. And I know there's a lot of different types of people that go to Joe Fest, fans, and a lot of different types of fans that go to Assembly Required. And there was a lot of different people that went to Joe Con. So what do you do to try to get all these different audiences engaged in your event? Brian, you're running 2 different events concurrently. How do you balance those things?
Well, I try to cut our own cloth. We try to be take on a different approach to the convention in general. So it's not either we're not stepping on other people's toes or we're not playing copycat. Just that we could offer up a different product. It's under the same brand. It's just a different product. So, really try hard to be more informative, being that place where people can meet the creators and encourage the creativity. That's really kind of what sets us apart, and that's what we try to draw is building a different type of show. We're not focused on the sales floor. I mean, we not diminishing the sales floor or making it smaller. It's just that there is so much more than the sales floor.
Yeah.
So what do you think is the key to trying to engage all these dispersed groups that love G.I. Joe, Roger, but you have the 12-inch guys, the 4-inch guys, the O-ring guys, now the classified guys. There's the role-playing audience. There's the animator audience, the comic book audience. There's a lot of different audiences that are into G.I. Joe. It covers a wide breadth of materials and different fandoms in and of themselves.
Absolutely. I think one, you have to be aware of that and evolve as it comes. Like 3 years ago, classified wouldn't have made a difference. Now it makes a huge difference. I think you have to not exclude anybody. You kind of have to make it the umbrella of G.I. Joe versus a 3 3/4-inch G.I. Joe show. You've got to broaden it to the characters rather than the format. And just keep it open and keep it evolving and always adapt to the changes and the needs of the community.
So you don't feel that makes it very thin, trying to incorporate all these different audiences and bring them together. You don't end up like a MegaCon where it's only like media, where they're just selling you Red Bull or selling you insurances or bathtubs or mattresses, and you lose the identity of what you started the convention for, which that was a comic book convention, and it doesn't resemble a comic book convention now.
Yeah. Well, I think the difference there is you're dealing with one property essentially versus thousands of properties. What MegaCon got watered down because it covers so many things. But 12-inch G.I. Joe and classified, there's still G.I. Joe. They're still under that same umbrella. So, you're probably not going to focus as much on 12-inch vintage G.I. Joes as much as you are 80s and newer, but you're still going to have G.I. Joe as a overall subject rather than just entertainment, which covers damn near everything. So
Yeah, I can agree with that. I think there's a lot of that, like you said, again, staying in your lane, figuring out where you are and being true to that, and not trying to be all things to everybody.
yeah.
That's just generally a good practice when it comes to brand building or building an identity for yourself, is to, be true to yourself and be, who you are.
Yeah.
And I think the shows that do that the best are the ones that, that stick around. The ones who try to be too much to too many people, like, end up getting, there is no one thing that draws everybody in.
Yeah.
Now, Brian, you do two different events concurrently every year, or almost every year. And there's now been several groups that have been doing these like online events. There's Armor, which has had its third year this year. And then there's HEC Cobra Commanders event, which I can't think
Cobra
of.
Convergence.
Cobra Convergence,
yeah.
that's in July. Do you see in the future that this type of event is going to get a little bit more popular? Because the world of streaming and doing what we do here, and bringing this to a bigger audience than you can in a brick and mortar physical location, is a lot more convenient. Do you feel that that is the future of these type of things, or do you think there's room for both, like you've been doing the last few years?
I definitely think there's room for both. I definitely think that there is that idea that you want, you need to have the physical aspect. You want to be able to meet, buy, sell, trade, and hang out with people. But it's also nice that you have some of this other, kind of the theme things that get the rest of the community involved. That you don't have to necessarily, drop $800 to fly and get a hotel and do everything to attend, to get some information, or to see, hang out and have a conversation with people. I think I think that's what the benefit of doing both is that you can, for the people who are on the West Coast who have who don't want to come to Des Moines, at least they get a little bit of a flavor of what we can do.
Yeah.
And I love how, Cobra Convergence, and how that pulls the community together and gets everybody kind of like, something to rally around.
Yeah.
I was involved in Armor 3 this year, and it gave me no end of satisfaction and enjoyment being in that kind of event. We're doing the G.I. Joe Fan Club Live for those same reasons that you spoke of, to bring information, bring guests and people's knowledge and experience to fans of the community that can't necessarily reach a Joe Fest, reach an Assembly Required, reach a Joe Con, or whatever thing. We premiered the G.I. Joe Fan Club Live last year at Assembly Required. So there's a mix of both of those. They can touch one another, they can go their separate ways, but also reach fans in all walks of life around the globe. Is that a valid point there, that we can reach around the globe? Where I know we had people come to Joe Fest from Trinidad, from Australia, from England this year. But that's just 3 countries.
Right. Yeah, I think the global reach is definitely important, because there are Joe fans around the world, and I think that inclusion is great. And then I also think there's a archiving fact, or archiving feature that comes out of this. That's, at least that's what I've kind of noticed with some of the interviews we've had, is that we're actually, helping to capture stories and moments and putting information out there for people to, that will be out for people to gather, and so they can have a better understanding of the hobby, or if they want to get down to the nitty gritty and learn about some things. Because let's face it, some of these guys, aren't going to stick around, aren't going to be around for a whole lot longer, and we need to make sure that we can get that information and that what their stories and their lore and capture that.
Yeah,
Roger,
absolutely.
you're into archival type materials with your series of books. Do you agree with Brian on that?
Absolutely. Just for example, we had Larry Hama interviewed in all 3 volumes. Kirk Bazigian did our first introduction, and then I spoke to Jim Shooter just before I got sick, so I haven't followed it up yet. But all 3 of them were at that initial meeting back in 81, 82 about how to introduce Cobra as the enemy and all that with Marvel and Hasbro. And all 3 of them have slightly conflicting stories. So you kind of need all 3 points of view to get that story. Any one of them is not quite accurate. So as soon as I talked I showed the interview to Shooter, and he opened it up and read like 3 sentences and went, "Nope, that's all wrong. That's all wrong. Nope, this guy did this and this did that." I was like, "Well, that was his point of view at the time." So yeah, I definitely think the archival aspect of it is necessary, even in our just little hobby of fandom here. That history is going to be lost if it's not recorded.
I agree with both of you, because I always think of these panels with the declassified team and with Carson and with 3D Joe's, and a lot of the stuff that I've learned. And I've spoken to many of the people, Kurt Buzigian, Larry Hama, you name it. Dan Klingensmith's books as well. And all this archival stuff can only help the fandom be better educated and bring the fandom together. Because when we talk about this stuff, and we're like, yeah, did you see what was in Dan's book this last issue? Or did we see this cool article that was in the After Action Report? I love reading these articles and looking at this research. And Ron Rudout, we have these people at our fingertips right now, and we need to document this stuff. And these events, whether they're the online events, the G.I. Joe fan club, or the in-house, they're not going to be able to travel to the in-house events that much. I know that they're not in the health that a lot of people would be for travel and stuff like that. I know Ron has said that he can do a lot of travel, and Larry as well. He doesn't do a lot of travel because his health is getting up there and stuff.
Yeah, it's getting less and less every year.
Yeah, every year. And I had heard he said he was done doing conventions, but then he showed up at Joe Fest this year. So I thought that was a little surprising.
I think he's done unless he's invited. That's the key. If he's invited, that's a big turning point for him.
So yeah, I think that is a major key to whether these events are not successful, but additive, I guess is the word, where you get something more for your buck or more for your time or whatever value, and I've always done that with every Joe Con I ever went to. I learned a lot every time, and now I'm involved in this stuff, and I'm still learning. I was on Armor 3 this year, and I learned stuff researching a subject on that. And it was surprising because I thought I knew as much as there was to know about the particular subject that I was covering. But I learned a lot, not just in my own portion of that, but other people's portions. I learned information. So I thought that was a very fascinating, interesting way to do an event where you're coming from different perspectives about a particular subject matter, and that person that's doing one portion might not know what the other portion is and learn something. And I thought that was really good. So I got more out of it than just contributing. I learned from my own event, or Brian's event, I should say. And is that type of thing going to continue for Armor in the future? That balance, Brian, for entertainment and that knowledge and experience coming out
Get
as much
better.
as you can
Get
bring.
better.
I laugh at the entertainment part because I don't know whether that's a stab at our bad acting or if that's just the way Travis and I come off. But no, we definitely do want, plan on carrying it out and kind of like upping the game every year, doing a little bit more. Like this year was fun because we got to do a little more skit like acting to it, and we've got a couple things we kick around for next year, but we want to make sure that it's not it is what you expect, but it's not expected. So meaning that we'll have continue to do the good panels and get the interesting guests and get the approach to something and really drill down on a subject matter, but we'll present it in a way that is entertaining and fun.
That's why I tune in every time because I like it. What about the people that are involved in running shows? Because you see a lot of shows, and I've been involved, like I said, in lots of different events across the gambit. And the showrunners, in particular, each type of show, you can tell when they are treating their people right and when they're not treating their people right. And I'm talking about really big conventions and teeny little conventions. You can tell when a show is treating the people that are helping them put this show on. That's their staff. I kind of got a little bit snippy with a show I was watching. I'm not going to say what the show was, but I was watching a YouTube show, and they were talking about the person that ran the show, giving this person props and giving this person accolades and lifting this person up and making it like this person's the only person that made that show or that event. And I personally, being involved in shows, see the hard work that everybody that contributes to a show makes the success of that show. Am I mistaken in that? Because I've seen your team at Assembly Required and how you treat your team at Assembly Required, Brian, and I've never seen you like dismiss them or pretend that you're the only person that makes all that stuff happen. I've never seen that, and I've only known you for a few years, but I think I've come to have a good understanding of who you are. Am I mistaken or correct?
I need to work on correcting that. I need to stop giving everybody credit and just make sure it's all focused on me because I'm it. I'm the only one. There's no Travis. There's no Chad. There's no Dak. There's no David. Nobody else helps me out. That's not true. Like it's really crazy because I think about it and I think about, the all the stuff that goes into putting on the show, all the from the logistics of actually handling the show to preparing communications, organization, and it's a lot of people involved. And I do, like I said, I may do all these really creative ideas and do a lot of stuff, but it's these other guys around me, it's the rest of the crew that helps out and allows me that time to do this stuff. And so without them, I wouldn't be as involved or as in depth as it could be or as it is. But no, I think the staff, and I feel staff is okay. I prefer to call them my crew because it's really everybody participates in and contributes.
What about you, Roger? You've been around a while. Have you been to any shows where you feel the staff are just kind of like indentured servants, or have you been to shows where they are integral to the success of a show and they're treated respectfully?
Well, it's hard to see behind the curtain when you're just at the show, so it's a little hard to say how they were treated behind the scenes. What I can speak to is I have volunteered at a few shows. I did some Transformer, some BotCons and a JoeCon, and I was never treated badly by any means, and it was I'd control a line for a few hours or stock figures into bags for the convention goers and stuff like that. But there's no way a show can be run without a crew of people behind it. They have to be there. So if you don't treat them right, you're not going to have a good show.
So the community, the Joe community, is a very supportive community. We support all these projects that come out and people that we meet at the events and things like that. The community supports JoeCon, Joe Fest, Assembly Required, so-called Joe Show, the Toylanta, Joe Lanta, Kentuckiana. They did support the CoilCon that folded, but do you feel the audience is enough to keep these types of events growing, or is there a diminishing returns there where there's too many shows, not enough people to support it, they're too stretched out across the country? What do you guys think about some of these ideas?
I think the fact that they are stretched out is what helps them survive. I mean, I've never been to SoCal because, I'm in Florida, so I don't get out to California very often. I haven't even been to Kentuckiana, and that I used to live in Kentucky, but it started the year I left, so I've never been to that show. Or Dallas Fort Worth, never been to that show, but I have been to Joe Lanta, I've been to Joe Fest, I've been to Toylanta, several JoeCons, but it's all because they're in the region that I'm in. I couldn't possibly support all the other ones. But I think on the other end of that, to continue growing the community, it's not just on us. That has to go to Hasbro too. They have to have some responsibility to keep people interested and keep kids getting into the brand. Right now, they seem to be focused more on adults, and they almost don't seem to care the kids exist. But if they don't keep bringing in new blood for the community to grow, then it will stagnate at some point. But that's still a good decade or more out before that does start to happen.
What do you think, Brian?
Yeah, I got to agree. I think it is a lot of it has to do with product, with the availability of just the merchandise for the brand, how they build the brand. I mean, that's going to help support the community the best. But I mean, I think geographically we're spread out in different places. I think timing wise, we're not overlapping each other too much. And I think there's pros and cons to each one. And I think it's a good choice, for people to decide if you want to go to 3, you want to go to 2, you want to go to 5. Like, there's options out there for you. And it's, I think it's great. I have no problem with, more shows popping up. I think as long as they're done well and, they respect the other shows, and I'd love to see this community grow bigger. I mean, that's the whole reason why I do the show, is because of the community growth, is, to share the love and the passion for the product, for the brand. It does me no good to put on a show because, it's not a moneymaker, and which is fine. That's totally not a complaint. That's just the way it is. And it is something that I say is fantastic if we can just, have friends. I get to have 200, 300, 400 friends come and hang out for the weekend and talk and play and do all things G.I. Joe. And that's awesome. That's great.
Yeah, that's the way I felt about my first comic shop. It didn't matter if it was making money per se, but it felt like I had friends coming out and hanging out in my living room every day. It eventually folded and I moved on, but that's that was the feeling we had. Was it just was it was it was a local community, but it was a community.
So that's basically what I'm getting out of all, this whole conversation is community with one another, community with the larger group, learning, the community teaching and learning and supporting all projects and supporting events and supporting and Hasbro supporting their community and stuff. So I'm getting that that's the key focus of all of this.
I'd say so.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, it's, it's no fun playing by yourself. It's fun to have, your friends around, and it's fun to interact.
Yeah. Yeah. Like we said earlier, we've all been to a lot of conventions, and GI Joe conventions are always my favorite because those are the most community oriented ones. Star Wars, the Star Wars celebrations, those are not community oriented. They are event oriented, definitely, but they're a little boring because you just kind of get lost in the crowd. It all becomes about merchandise and autographs, and that's it.
Yeah, I've been to 4 Star Wars celebrations over the decades, and they are monster shows. And it is kind of like an anesthetized type of thing, where it's like stand in a line, follow this thing, And I've been to shows like that. I don't like shows like that, but there's a necessary evil when it comes to shows like that, because you're not going to meet Mark Hamill unless you go to Star Wars Celebration. You're not going to meet, all these types of people that you want from Star Wars if you don't go. And that goes for San Diego Comic-Con, New York Comic-Con, to a certain extent MegaCon. It's a little bit stepped down from New York Comic-Con and San Diego Con, but it at its height, it was 350,000 people before COVID. But yeah, so it's about the community, and it's about coming together and supporting something we all love. And so, speaking of supporting and community, I want to thank Brian Sauer for joining us as our guest for this episode of the GI Joe Fan Club Live. And thank you, Roger Taft, for coming on board as one of our new co-hosts. I want to let the fans know, if you have any comments or would like to suggest topics for future episodes of the GI Joe Fan Club Live, to comment below. This is going to be on the GI Joe Fan Club Live YouTube channel in the future. So look for season 1 and then now season 2. So thank you, Brian, and thank you, Roger.
Not a problem. Anytime you need somebody to take up space, I'm here.
I'm easy to find.
See you next time.